there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully you all are having a wonderful day today. So when it comes down to it, I thought that I would compromise my own top 10 pound for pound list because, of course, this channel is primarily a boxing channel. I do talk about a certain amount of other sports, but when it comes down to it, boxing, of course, is my main bread and butter on this channel. So I thought, hey, why not? Why not have some fun with it overall and basically put my personal top 10 pound for pound list out there heading into 2022. And my pound for pound list, I think, is going to be a little bit different compared to a certain amount of other people's. And the reason why that is because I actually have a points ranked system. And my points ranked system, and the reason why I did that is because I'm trying to most logically and objectively put fighters on the top 10 pound for pound list that I think truly do deserve it. So basically what I do is this: I rank off of 4 categories. And I'm not saying that the system is absolutely perfect, but it's the best system that I can come up with, at least at the current moment in time. I rank off of 4 categories. I rank off of resume, I rank off of accomplishments, I rank off of dominance, and I rank off of skill set. So basically, meaning what within this video? So there is a certain amount of points that you can gain within this video, or, if you're a top tier fighter, you can have the most amount of points that you can have possible is 420 points. Now, when it comes to resume and accomplishments, those 2 categories, in my opinion, are worth 110 points. So that means that not only could you get an A+ grade in that category, but you could possibly get an A++, grade in that category. Meaning what? That basically you get a little bit of extra credit because resume, in my opinion, it has to be above that of dominance and skill set. Dominance and skill set, they're worth 100 points each when it comes down to it. So, all in all, those are very important categories as well, but they can't be ranked above accomplishments or resume because you never really know how great a fighter is, especially if they're in the lower weight classes, pretty much anywhere below cruiserweight or heavyweight, unless they're facing people within a multitude of weight divisions. Not only that, but facing repeated A-grade competition. So that's why those 2 categories, in my opinion, are ranked above skill set and dominance, because a fighter can look very skilled, they can look very dominant, but all in all, you never know until they face A-grade competition, because once again, Mike Tyson and Adrian Broner and, Prince Nassim Hamed, they all looked extremely skilled for their day, but then when they fought that big A-grade fight, they usually lost. So it just is what it is. So that's why I can't have skill set or dominance above resume or accomplishments. So anyways, heading into this list when it comes down, and let me also explain one more thing, because certain people on their pound for pound list, they like to, once again, mainly rank off of skill, and I do get why they do that, but once again, I'm a results-oriented person, meaning that, I need to see it to believe it. So if you're an A-grade skilled fighter, or if you look like that, let's talk about Jaron Boots Ennis here for a second. Many people may say, well, why is Jaron Boots Ennis not on this list? Because Jaron Boots Ennis just doesn't have the accomplishments, he doesn't have the resume. I think that he is a very, very skilled fighter. In terms of skills, he would probably be within my top 30 pound for pound at least. But Jaron Boots Ennis, I just can't have him there because he does not have any A-grade wins. He has not really won any belts in his career. So, I do need to pump the brakes on that a little bit. And also another thing that I will explain is that I do not, this pound for pound list, many people always want to say, the pound for pound list is based off of, if they were in the same weight class, would they beat each other? That's somewhat it, but I don't always like to compare fighters from different weight classes and ask the question, if they were in the same weight class, who would win? I don't always like to compare that, because especially the lighter weight class fighters, they can appear usually to be more skilled, faster, better feet, just more slick. So let's say we're comparing a Tyson Fury to that of a Vasyl Lomachenko or Javonta Tang. They can look a lot more skilled than a Tyson Fury, but I don't compare Tyson Fury to the lighter weight class fighters. The question that I'll ask about Tyson Fury, for example, is, how good is he compared to the cruiserweights or the other heavyweights? Because those are the guys that, they have his own same physical dimensions and they have overall his same build, yada, 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 yada. If it's a Javonta Tank Davis or Vasyl Lomachenko, I'm comparing them to 130-pounders, 135-pounders, 140-pounders. If I'm comparing Mr. Canelo Alvarez, I'm comparing him to 154-pounders, 160-pounders, 168-pounders mainly, and maybe 175-pounders as well. Those are the main fighters that I'm comparing Canelo Alvarez with, if I'm doing that. So I just thought that I would talk about that. But anyways, just to now get straight into the list, we're going to talk about my personal top 10 pound for pound. I tried to rank this the best that I could. A lot of people may disagree, but like I said, it just is what it is. So let's get into, first of all, the honorable mentions of the list, and let's get into it. So this is the honorable mentions or people that are within my top 20 pound for pound. Hopefully the names aren't too small, but I'll list them out. The first one is George Kambosos Jr. Now, he is the only one that I will kind of explain why he's not on my top 10 pound for pound list. A lot of people overall may ask the question, well, he did defeat Teofimo Lopez, who is a current top 10 pound for pound fighter, especially on my list last year when he defeated Vasyl Lomachenko, and he has the majority of the belts. Why is he not on your top 10 pound for pound list? I do need to see, in my opinion, George Kambosos against consistent A-grade fighters. He did defeat a very, very decent fighter in Teofimo Lopez, but the other wins in his career, in my opinion, were just decent wins. And on top of that, I do have a feeling that I think that it was just a style of matchups. And on top of that, Teofimo not putting his best foot forward is a part of the reason why I think George Kambosos was able to get that big win. So I'm kind of waiting to see if George Kambosos, I'm not saying that he's not a real deal fighter. I think that he is. But he has to be within my top 15 pound for pound at the current moment in time, because the win over Teofimo Lopez is a great, great win, but he does not have consistent wins over A-grade competition. And, I do think that victory over Teofimo Lopez, I do think that maybe it could be another Anthony Joshua versus Andrew Ruiz Jr. type of situation, or Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson. That is the main reason why I have him there. But some people, of course, may disagree, but we'll see. I'm not really going to explain the other ones. I'm just going to list them off. Artur Beterbiev, very, very close to my top 10 pound for pound list. Dimitri Bivol, he's on the lower end of the tier, in my opinion. Devin Haney, same with him. Shakur Stevenson, Oscar Valdez, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, Jermell Charlo, Yordenis Ugas, Brian Castano, and of course, Anthony Joshua. If you guys have any questions about why any of these fighters are not on my top 10 pound for pound list, I certainly overall would love to answer any of those questions in the comment section. So if you guys have any questions, certainly go ahead and ask me. But anyways, let's now get into the top 10 pound for pound list. Let's start off with number 10. So number 10, and this may surprise a certain amount of people, Mr. Vasyl Lomachenko. Now, some people may ask, why do you have him this low on the list? Some people may ask, why have him on the list at all? Because he doesn't hold any belts at the current moment in time when it comes down to it. And on top of that, he did lose his last big fight against Teofimo Lopez. Well, I do think Vasyl Lomachenko debatably does deserve to be on the top 10 pound for pound list. He is a highly skilled fighter. And as you see, the most amount of points that I gave him is 371 out of 420. I think that his resume is A grade. He does have very good wins over Nicholas Walters, Guillermo Rigondeaux, who at one point in time was a top 10 pound for pound fighter. So we do have to give Vasyl Lomachenko credit for that. I do think his resume is still A grade. I think that his accomplishments, even for the little amount of fights that he has, is still A grade. His skill set, in my opinion, is at least an A. Some would debate A plus, but I do think all in all that it has to be degraded a little bit because of that Teofimo Lopez loss. And the dominance, of course, has to be down a little bit, even though he was very dominant this year over Nakatani and Richard Comey, two fighters that are decently tough, but not necessarily A grade. I think that this is a very fair ranking for Vasyl Lomachenko. Some people would debate that he could be higher on the list. I just can't have him higher on my list because he does not have any current belts at the moment in time. But his overall most amount of points is 371 out of 420. That's where I have Mr. Vasyl Lomachenko. So number 9, and this may surprise a certain amount of people, this may not surprise a certain amount of people. I've kind of mentioned in the past that in my opinion, Mr. Javonta Tank Davis could be debatably one of the top 10 pound for pound fighters. His resume, in my opinion, is an A minus, could be a B plus. So Javonta Tank Davis, in my opinion, he's anywhere from that 9 to 13 range, in my opinion. He's anywhere from there. But the reason why I put Javonta Tank Davis on this top 10 pound for pound list, I think that his dominance and his skill set, I do think that it is undeniable. Accomplishments and resume, I do have an A minus here. Now, some people may ask, he's a 3-weight division champion. Why do you have it as an A minus? Well, because one of the belts that he won within those weight divisions, in my opinion, it wasn't really an actual title. I mean, it was kind of like, one of the regular championships, and I don't really count that as a legitimate title, at least in my opinion. His accomplishments, so like I said, A minus. Resume, A minus, because he's never really debatably beat a top 10 pound for pound fighter, but he did get that very big win over Leo Santa Cruz, so I'll give him a certain amount of credit. Isaac Cruz, in my opinion, was not necessarily an A grade fighter, but he was at least a decent B grade fighter. I give him a B plus probably, so I'll give him credit over that. And on top of that, Mario Barrios, I don't think that he was A grade either, but he probably was around a B grade, so I'll give Javonta Tank Davis some credit there. But he has the same amount of points, in my opinion, as a Vasyl Lomachenko. And on top of that, Javonta Tank Davis, he does have current belts within certain weight divisions at the time. He has certainly looked more dominant at the current moment in time, and his skill set is up there with anyone, in my opinion. So this is one of those rare occasions where I put Javonta Tang Davis, not only because of some of the things that he's accomplished, but also because his skill set, in my opinion, is undeniable. So Javonta Tang Davis, like I said, he could be debatably at 9. He could be debatably at 13, 10, 11, somewhere around there. I personally put him at number 9. So that's Javonta Tang Davis at number 9. Let's move on to the next slide. So number 8, I have, of course, the Mexican fighter Juan Francisco Estrada. It was very, very hard to rank overall these 3 fighters, in my opinion. I don't personally believe that Juan Francisco Estrada is as skilled as a Javonta Tang Davis or Vasyl Lomachenko. However, I do have to give Juan Francisco Estrada credit. He does have a very decent resume for those lower weight divisions. He did beat Carlos Cuadras. I believe that he also beat Sarang Visai in the rematch. And, of course, recently he got that victory over Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, which, of course, you see pictured here. I did personally think that it was a little bit controversial. So, dominance, I did have an A- there. Skill set, I don't think that he's as comparable as some of the other guys on this list. But he is the Ring Magazine champion at the current time. He is somewhat of a unified champion within that weight division. So I have to give Juan Francisco Estrada some credit here. I do believe that he has another fight, actually a trilogy fight over Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez in the 3rd fight. Overall, I think that fight happens in March, so I'm very excited to see that fight. You could rank him, I think that this is the highest ranking, in my opinion, that Juan Francisco Estrada could get. Very decent fighter. You could rank him a little bit lower if you wanted to, but I think 8 is somewhat fair. I think that it's fair for a person that at the current moment in time has multiple belts, Ring Magazine champion, I believe. Did get a decision over Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, in my opinion. Was a little bit controversial, but a very good competitive fight. 7 rounds to 5, in my opinion, probably for Chocolatito, but, maybe if I were to rewatch it, maybe I would change my mind. But Juan Francisco Estrada, he's at number 8 on my list. I think that that's a decently fair position for him. Let's go on to number 7. So number 7, I have Mr. Naoya Inoue, or Inoue, however you pronounce his name, in my opinion, sorry. But when it comes down to it, Mr. Naoya Inoue, very dominant fighter, decently skilled overall for those weight divisions. I don't necessarily think that his skill set is on the same level as a Vasyl Lomachenko or Javonta Tang Davis. I do think that maybe it's a little bit below, but for his weight divisions, you can still see that he is decently skilled, very, very dominant, one of the most dominant fighters in the world. The only problem I would say with Mr. Naoya Inoue is that he does not necessarily have an A-grade resume. I cannot tell you a lot of the fighters on his, resume that are A-grade. He does have a couple of decent wins. He has a win over Jamie McDonald, who is a former champion, and, Payano, who I believe is a decent Dominican Republic fighter, and, even Nonito Donaire, who, in my opinion, was a little bit more older, but still at an okay point in his career. Naoya Inoue, in my opinion, I can't really have him any higher than this on my list. Of course, certain people, they would even rank him within their top 5 pound for pound. I think that Inoue is decently talented, but I got to see him in some A-grade fights. I would like to see him against Chocolatito or Juan Francisco Estrada or, a Guillermo Rigondeaux, whoever the hell that one dude is that ended up getting the decision over Guillermo Rigondeaux last time. One of those guys. I would like to see Naoya Inoue in the ring with one of those guys. We'll see. All in all, what happens. I think that he's talented, especially he's a very, very talented athlete. A-grade power, A-grade speed, decent fighter. But I do need to see him in the ring with better opponents, in my opinion. So Naoya Inoue at number 7, 372 out of 420. I think that that's decently fair. All right, so at number 6 on my list, Mr. Josh Taylor, of course, the Scottish fighter. And, of course, you see him there on the left, not on the right. That's Mr. Jose Ramirez. Josh Taylor, in my opinion, did go up a few spots. Last time I had him on my top 10 pound for pound list, I had him at number 10. All in all, now he certainly has jumped up a few spots. I don't think that he did enough, in my opinion, to quite make it into the top 5. Some people may disagree, but Josh Taylor, in my opinion, he certainly is with one of the top 10 pound for pound fighters. His resume is an A, in my opinion. You could debate it as an A-, but he was able to unify a very, very talented 140-pound division. Jose Ramirez at least was on the A- level. I think that Victor Postal, he's either on the A- or B+ level, so you can debate that. Regis Prograis is at least on the A- level. Some may even debate him as A. So, Josh Taylor, man, he pretty much tore everyone through that division. He was able to clearly beat all the top contenders, in my opinion, in that division. His accomplishments, because he was able to win the Super 6 Series tournament, I believe, And all in all, he was also able to completely unify that division. His accomplishments have to be an A. The only thing I would say is that his skill set, even though I do think that he personally is very highly skilled, I would say that he's about an A minus. And the reason why I say that is because if I'm comparing Josh Taylor, like I said, I have to compare you to your contemporaries and your peers and other competitors within those weight divisions. Let's say he were to move up to 147 pounds. I think that he would possibly even struggle beating that of a Sean Porter or that of a what the hell is his name? Danny Swift Garcia. So I would have to see Josh Taylor in some of those fights because, in my opinion, all those fighters that he beat, very decent fighters. I think that they're at least on the A minus level. Some may even debate B plus. But I think that his skill set, would I compare it necessarily to an Earl Spencer Jr. or Terrence Crawford? No. So I think he has to be a level below them. But Josh Taylor at number 6, I think that that's the perfect ranking for him. I think that that's decently logical and fair. Let's go on to the top 5. So number 5, I have Mr. Earl Spencer Jr., and I had him higher on my list earlier on, of course, last year, but I don't believe that he fought any time throughout the whole year of 2021, so that did hurt him a little bit. The last fight that he was in, of course, as you see in this picture, was against Danny Swift Garcia. Very, very dominant win over a very decent fighter, in my opinion, at least over an A-minus fighter, and but the problem was, of course, Earl Spencer Jr., he had to go down a little bit on my list. He didn't fight the whole entire year. And all in all, he didn't gain any more extra titles. If he would have fought Manny Pacquiao and beat him, then that probably would have been a great win. Of course, now that we've seen Manny Pacquiao, he was he was pretty wore down in that fight, but it is what it is. But anyways, his resume, A grade, I think, in my opinion. Accomplishments, A minus. Skill set, A. Dominance, A plus. 380 out of 420. I think all in all that is very decently correct. I think that that's a very, very fair ranking for him. You could debate him higher on the list if you wanted to. Earl Spence is anywhere from, some people may debate him as high as 2. Some people may debate him as low as number 5 or number 6. But I think that he's within the top 5 pound for pound for sure. I just can't have him as high as I did anymore because Earl Spence, he's been inactive for quite a while. And we'll just see where it goes from there. And on top of that, he only has done work within one weight division and only captured 2 titles. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, let's move on to number 4. Number 4, Mr. Terrence Bud Crawford. And a certain amount of people, of course, they're going to look at me like I'm crazy. And some people are going to say, what? How can you have Terrence Crawford only at number 4? Why don't you have him higher? Well, when I take a look at his resume, I think that it's a decent resume, but I do have to rank it A minus. The reason why that is because Terrence Bud Crawford, I don't think that he's ever debatably beat a top 10 pound per pound fighter. The best wins of his career is over Victor Postol, Yuriorkis Gamboa, and that of a Sean Porter. And I think that Sean Porter is clearly the best victory of his career. And Sean Porter, in my opinion, he's about an A-minus fighter. And the reason why he's an A-minus fighter is because he's pretty much on that same level of Danny Garcia, in my opinion, to where very decent fighter. He has some skills, but he's not going to be, the creme de la creme. And if that's the biggest win of your career, I can't necessarily say that you have an A or A plus resume. His accomplishments is A, at least in my opinion. He completely unified 140, was a Ring Magazine champion, I believe, at 135. Also welterweight champion, WBO welterweight champion. Some may say, hey, he should probably have an A plus, accomplishments. You certainly could debate that, but the only reason why I ranked it down a little bit lower is because I think when he unified 140, I don't think that it necessarily was the most talented division. So that's why, in my personal opinion, his accomplishments, at least at the current moment in time, would be A. You could debate it A plus though. You could if you wanted to. So that overall is something that you certainly could debate. But Terrence Bud Crawford, one of the most skilled fighters in the world, his skill set is A plus. Dominance so far has been A plus, at least against the better competition that he has faced. He does rise to the occasion very well. You could argue him higher on this list if you wanted to, but his resume, in my opinion, does need to get a little bit better, even still, if you want to compare him to some of the other fighters. So, in my opinion, 380 out of 420, same as Earl Spence Jr., I believe. That's pretty decently fair. All right, so number 3 on this list, and I know a certain amount of people, they're going to really say, wow, you really have this dude very, very high on your list. Yes, I do. Tyson Fury has only done work within one weight division, but I have to give him a lot of credit because there's only one weight division that he really can work in. And Tyson Fury, one thing I will say is this, I give him the Andre Ward type of treatment because when Andre Ward defeated Sergey Kovalev, he did not have to rebuild his career back up because he was undefeated, and he still had that past resume. Tyson Fury, in my opinion, is very, very similar. His resume has to be A+, in my opinion. He defeated Deontay Wilder, who, in my opinion, when he was undefeated, would have not been top 10 pound for pound ever, but he would have been top 20 pound for pound in my opinion. He would have been right there with a certain amount of others. So Deontay Wilder, in my opinion, a very dominant win, generational type of fight, 50-50 fight that could have went either way in every single fight, in my opinion. And Tyson Fury was able to embarrass Deontay Wilder each and every single time. Not only that, but to also mention the Vladimir Klitschko win. When Tyson Fury was able to defeat Vladimir Klitschko was 100% ranked as a top 10 pound for pound fighter on every single list. On a lot of lists, he was ranked within the top 5, and Tyson Fury was able to embarrass him. He was able to embarrass Deontay Wilder. His accomplishments, it has to be A+, at least somewhat. He's the only heavyweight within the past 10 plus years, I believe, that has held every single belt within that weight division. So he has to be, A+ in my opinion in terms of accomplishments, and he's defeated some very, very decent fighters. His skill set is A, at least in my opinion. Some would debate for the heavyweight division A+, but because he did look a little bit vulnerable in that last Deontay Wilder fight, and in my opinion, kind of underwhelmed a little bit compared to his usual standards, I would say that his skill set, at least at the moment, is an A. Dominance, in my opinion, is an A. I am going to have to see him against other top-tier contenders like Andrew Ruiz or Joseph Parker or other guys like that. But Tyson Fury, in my opinion, at the number 3 spot, I think that this is decently fair. He is one of the few fighters that has been in 2 generational fights, 2 50-50 fights that really would really describe people's legacies, and Tyson Fury was in one of those humongous fights against Deontay Wilder, so I have to give him a lot of credit. He beat Deontay Wilder, in my opinion, pretty much 3 times. Also embarrassed Vladimir Klitschko, 2 people, in my opinion, who are going to make, the first Battle Hall of Fame. So we'll see overall what happens. But Mr. Tyson Fury, Tyson the Gypsy King Fury, at number 3 on my list. So at number 2, and of course I think I've said this in prior videos, I have Mr. Alexander Usyk, the current unified or somewhat unified champion of the heavyweight division. So just going overall what he did, he had an amazing year overall this year. I believe the first thing overall that he had was a fight against Derek Chisora. I believe overall that was in the year 2021. If I'm wrong about that, someone correct me. I cannot necessarily remember. But all in all, he didn't necessarily look too dominant against Derek Chisora. But that is probably the fight overall when you talk about his career, when he fought higher grade competition. That's probably the only fight where he has not looked very, very dominant. And I still thought that he looked somewhat, good in that fight. But against Anthony Joshua, who was on my prior top 10 pound for pound list before his loss because of the top contenders that he fought within the heavyweight division, Alexander Usyk has to be on this list. And it's not like he just has beaten Anthony Joshua, so it's not a George Kambosos Jr. situation. He completely unified, in my opinion, a very talented heavyweight division. He beat Murat Gassiev, he beat Michael Hunter, he beat Maris Bradis, he beat Glowacki, he beat Marco Huck. At least all the guys that are top contenders, proven to be decent at the cruiserweight division. And in my opinion, some of those guys are very decently talented. Tony Bellew as well. He was able to completely embarrass all those guys pretty much. So he was able to not only win the Super 6 tournament or the Muhammad Ali trophy, I believe a cruiserweight, goes up to heavyweight, beats a couple of decent contenders, then faces Anthony Joshua, in my opinion, debatably the best heavyweight in the world, even though personally I would debate that it was Tyson Fury. But Alexander Usyk beats Anthony Joshua. No debate about it. Beats him 9 rounds to 3 or 8 rounds to 4. Can't really get more dominant than that. And on top of that, this dude outreached Alexander Usyk. He was taller. He was certainly heavier in terms of the pounds. This dude had more power. Anthony Joshua was supposed to be all around the better athlete and the bigger threat. Alexander Usyk made Anthony Joshua look silly in that fight. Alexander Usyk, in my opinion, with what he accomplished, has to be ranked in number 2. And of course, that leads us to number 1. So number 1 on my list, of course, is Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez. And this is the reason why I have him at number 1 pound for pound on my list. Like I said, Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez, he is the only one, in my opinion, in the world of boxing right now that could possibly debatably have an A+ in every single category. When you talk about his resume, I have an A++ there overall. And the reason why that is because he's fought so many great fighters, in my opinion. Now, some people may say that, it's only an A+, or maybe that is not that high. I think that it currently is. Canelo Alvarez has fought Danny Jacobs, Austin Trout, Araceli Lara, Miguel Cotto, Gennady Golovkin, Sergey Kovalev, Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith. Canelo Alvarez has fought almost everyone out there. Now, of course, there is certain, fighters that we would like to see Canelo Alvarez face, like David Benavidez, Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, and later on we may even have our to-be Dimitri Bivol, Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, Joe Smith Jr., all those guys, in my opinion, are decent opponents. And Canelo is even going up the cruiserweight in his next fight. Understandably, Olunga Makabu, he's not someone that, in my opinion, is an A-grade fighter, but it's a cruiserweight fight for Canelo, so I'll cut him some slack a little bit there. It's a chase for history, accomplishments A++ as well. Not only has he completely unified a division in the super middleweight division, which in my opinion was very talented when it comes down to the least decently talented, but on top of that, you know, he almost completely unified 160, beat Danny Jacobs, beat Gennady Golovkin, beat a certain amount of the other guys there, champion in 154, champion in 160, champion in light heavyweight as well, beat Sergey Kovalev, you know, a couple years ago as well. So, I mean, his accomplishments have to be A++ as well. Skill set, like I said, you know, that's only out of 100. Canelo is debatably, in my opinion, doesn't matter what weight class you compare him to, he is debatably the most skilled fighter in the world. When you talk about compared to his contemporaries, there's no one close to him within his weight divisions. There's no one, in my opinion, that is even close to his skill set. Not Artur Beterbiev, not Dimitri Bivol, not Jamal Charlo, not Demetrius Andre, not David Benavidez. There's just no one there. You know, and those, of course, are the guys that he has not fought yet. The total amount of points that I gave Canelo Alvarez was 417 out of 420. He blows away, in my opinion, any other fighter at the current moment in time. And like I said, this is a points rank system. I tried to make it as logical and objective as I could. I don't think that there is any other fighter that you can put at the number one pound for pound spot at the current moment in time. His skill set, his dominance, his resume, his accomplishments. There's just no one else that you can put in the spot at the current moment in time unless Canelo Alvarez were to suffer a loss a little bit later on. But anyways, that's pretty much it for my top 10 pound for pound list. Let me overall know what you guys thought about it, and I'll talk to you all later.